Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Susana Elizarraraz. I know a few of you. Thank you for those of you who are here and new to the space. It's going to be an interesting scenario because I'm talking to folks online and in here. So if I'm ever like looking there, that's why. But I'm Susana Elizarraraz. I'm so proud to be a part of FUERZA Entrepreneur Week this week. As you all maybe have seen, Chicano Center for the Arts is having FUERZA Week, where a bunch of entrepreneurs are coming in the space this week and talking about their business and topics that are important to them, but also to like future or new entrepreneurs. And then also some resources are here this week. So I know Bank of America was here earlier and other resources like that that are good for entrepreneurs to know about. I am here actually in this really interesting circumstance where I actually worked for the Latinx Education Collaborative for 5 years. I was a deputy director, which I'll talk a little bit more about now or here in a little bit. And then now I run a small business. And so I'm here to talk about beyond the 9 to 5, building a business after the bustle. I really, after like thinking of that, Deanna, this morning, that title, I was like, that's such a perfect way to encompass my life in the last like 10 years. I own El Oro's Tesoro, which actually I'm so grateful has a space right behind you all. These like Colgate and like laundry products right here are courtesy of El Oro's Tesoro. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means. But before we go there, important for us to talk about who we are when we're presenting about whatever we're presenting about, because when people are watching us or listening to us, if they can see themselves in you, it may spark some kind of motivation or inspiration that they need. So regardless of what part of your identity feels important to share, I know the space that I'm in right now, like I said, I worked for the LEC for 5 years. Talk about like our immigration stories, our multilingualism, being undocumented in this country. And so I bring that story to you today, hopefully for people who may be in similar situations, can hear my story and maybe feel motivated by it. So this is my family without my little brother. My little brother was born 8 years after I was, and so he's not here, but the cutest one in this picture is me. The little baby right here, which is crazy, Deanna. Now looking at this picture, my daughter looks so much like me, right? This is my mom, my older brother Noe, and my older sister Noeli. I always use this picture on purpose because when I was a kid, I used to see this picture and be like, why are we so sad? Like, why would my mom hang up that picture? It's such a like, I don't know, stoic, like sad looking picture. And now that's why I use it, because I think this picture shows like the uncertainty that we were in the middle of, really the fear of being in this country. Growing up, my mom was undocumented. They came to this country in the mid 1980s. And I really just don't know the ins and outs, but my dad became a citizen, but my mom didn't. And there was a lot of fear surrounding our lives because of that. We really were encouraged to not stand out. We were encouraged to be well behaved. Couldn't really talk real loud, be real loud, right? And so again, like this picture really encompassing that vibe that I had to grow up with. My family moved to Kansas City when I was 2 weeks old from Los Angeles, California. And the story is that they came here in a van that didn't have heating. And I was born in January, so they were trekking from LA to Kansas City in the middle of like February. My mom said to keep me warm, they were putting me on the floor of the van near the motor so that I was warm. And when I think back about the sacrifices that my family made for me to be where I am, that's encouraged me to do that 9 to 5 and to pursue my career in the way that I did. You'll see kind of how that has had to shift for me. And and I'm excited to share that story with you. But a lot of what I have accomplished and what I've done is obviously very much thanks to my parents and the sacrifice they made to come here. They were raised poor in Mexico, and there were very little. Actually, in their town, there was no opportunity for education, or even to this day, there really isn't a workforce there. It's more of like you own a small business and people get their tortillas and their pan from you. And that's pretty much about it, right? So coming here meant that we, as their kids, could pursue an education and a career. So that's a little bit about that. This is a little more fun. So who I am now, I totally forgot to include a picture of my husband and I. I have plenty of them, and I love them to death. But these are the miniature of us. So if you could just imagine. My son, Carlos Amado, he was born in October 2020. My daughter, Carmela Esperanza, she was born August 2023. And my journey to becoming a mother is so multi-layered, and I don't know that I have even time to go into that. But going back to the way I was raised in my family, a lot of the people around me were teen parents and had children very young. So for a long time, my husband and I were like, no, we don't want children. We don't want children. We don't want children. And then eventually did have children in our late 20s. So obviously, as most parents right now, I feel like a lot of what I do actually is for them and because of them. And you'll see how that's so much more literal than people, I think anyone says like, yeah, I do everything that I do for my kids. But very literally, you'll hear how my story is the case. So I'll kind of jump back and forth to some of the pictures so that you can kind of get in the mode of that vibe. But to talk about my career, and again, my title being Beyond the 9 to 5, I was very much like intrinsically motivated. I heard the stories of my mom crossing the border and my dad crossing the border, the sacrifices they made. They left their parents behind, their siblings behind, the fear and all of that. And so from the beginning, it was like, I'm going to go to college. 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 Growing up in the neighborhood, I actually grew up here in the Northeast. It was schools were at a time when college was the only answer. You were either going to college or you were a failure. At least that's what it felt like when I was in school. Now we have, so much more about tech programs and entrepreneurship, right? But in my generation, it was like, you need to go to college. So I did. I was the first in my family to graduate high school, actually. And I had an older brother and an older sister, as I mentioned. And their path took them in different ways. My brother didn't finish high school. He got his GED and works for a big corporation, and he does very well. My sister became a mom at 16, and so then her focus was that. So when it came time for me to graduate high school, I didn't have anyone, even like applying for graduation, like getting a cap and gown, those very technical things that happen when you're going to be graduating were really overwhelming for me because I didn't have anyone at home that I could be like, hey, how did you do this? What's better here? Class rings, I remember thinking back to class rings and I was like, I really wanted one. And now looking back, maybe if I had a mom that would have been like, Mija, you're never going to wear it. It's not going to fit you in 5 years, which my class ring hasn't fit me in forever, right? I maybe wouldn't have gotten one, right? Now I realize that's a very silly example, but that analogy being like, what college do I go to? Should I go away? Should I not go away? Should I choose a private over a public institution? Where do I look for scholarships? Schools are supposed to be set up to where they can support you with that, but we know how under-resourced schools are, right? But despite all that, I really am grateful for the school I went to, the people who I did have in my network. When I talk to people who are like me, I'll say, you need to network. You need to connect with people around you. If you cannot turn around and go home and ask parents about scholarships or about a financial future, et cetera, entrepreneurship, you have to connect with people in the community who are willing to be supportive of you. That's my biggest advice for people who ask me for it. And so I did. And luckily I was in a place where I found people at UMKC. UMKC and Rockhurst were actually in a little bit of a battle over me. I had really good grades. I knew I had to have good grades in order to pursue what I wanted to. Don't ask about my behavioral record in high school because that actually kept me. I'll tell you a quick story about that actually. My identity has been such a big part of my life, obviously, particularly being first generation and all of that. And I got in a lot of trouble in high school because I think I always had a knack for advocacy. So if I saw something that teachers were doing or saying that I didn't think was fair or was a little off, I would speak up. And adults don't like that, especially coming from someone like me who maybe wasn't saying it in the nicest way, I'll admit, right? Being a 15, 16-year-old kid. So I actually helped my school establish a junior honor society at the school. I was one of the founders. And then I got kicked out. And it broke my heart because I knew what it meant for scholarship money. My grades, obviously, like I said, always got me there, but I had too many detentions and I had too many suspensions. And so anyway, going back to that, like being a first generation kid and like trying to figure out like where I fit in, I ended up with this beauty. I pursued teaching and I'll never regret it ever a day in my life. It was some of the most beautiful times in my life. I pursued elementary education at UMK. Part of the program was really important to me because I knew I wanted to come back and teach in the neighborhood where I grew up. I grew up here in the Northeast, over in St. John and Monroe, and I wanted to teach here. So my purpose for wanting to teach here, I think, maybe kind of obvious, but I saw how crippling the education system can be to children when they don't have solid support systems. Growing up, going to middle school, going to high school, we lost friends to gun violence. We lost friends to drug violence and to drugs. We lost friends to addiction, right? And I think watching it happen to us, I was hoping that at some point maybe the adults in our lives would intervene. And the main adults being in our lives being teachers and educators. It was disappointing how sometimes education and educators were even the ones that pushed us away and told us, whether literally or not literally, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And looking back at those things and seeing the people who I grew up with who did lose their lives and who lost their way, what if they had a teacher who would have said, no, you're smart, let's go, you know? So anyway, I taught for 6 years. I taught 6th grade. As you can see, like all of my kiddos are almost taller than me in this picture. These were my students. And yeah, 6th. I'm right here, hidden amongst all the tallness. I know they were. This was us at a field trip. It was just such a fun time. But here's what I realized, unfortunately, when I was teaching. I got my master's degree when I was teaching English as a second language. And I started to realize that it is really difficult to truly advocate for children if you're going to be within the system. Because as with almost any industry, medicine, you see it, right? And law and crime, criminal justice, you see it, right? If you really want to be there for the people, there's a high chance you're going to get burnt out.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If you're truly there for the people, there's a high chance you're going to get burnt out
In the system.
in the system. And I hate to say that I know that there are people, that's not to say that there aren't people within systems making a huge difference, because that's totally not the case. But in my experience, when I would try to address things that went beyond curriculum instruction, like, hey, our kids can't learn until they're fed. Our kids can't learn until they're warm. Our kids can't learn until they're rested. Um, when you get into the logistics of all of that, it uh, there's a lot of pushback, because we're trying to be this well-oiled machine. And the way that the education system was established is that you put people on track to work, you put people on track to college, and that's it. Stop trying to help people, stop trying to feed people, stop trying to teach people how to vote, et cetera, right? You have a question?
No, no,
Oh,
no, it's very interesting what you say.
yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. I started which is still to this day still there, which I'm really proud of, a clothes closet slash pantry in my school. This was on top of, we already know how much teachers have on their plate, right? And it's not to boast, but I give you that example because it was difficult to gain support for that clothes closet from my school and from the district, either because they couldn't. Like I said, there's this well-oiled machine happening, and it's like you're kind of that person in the back, like, hey, I could use funding for this clothes closet, It's like, dude, we all have all these fires that we're putting out, which I totally understand. I really do understand. But I as a person couldn't continue to be a part of it because I saw the negative impact that it has on kids, right? Um, Particularly, I only know my experience, and I taught in a place that is under resourced, right? Which was my purpose. But here we are. And I don't say any of that you know, in malicious intent for anyone I worked for or with. It's just, again, no matter who you talk to, whether they're in finance, medicine, education, etc., they're struggling to make change. So I worked for the LEC for 5 years. I met Edgar. I was really grateful to meet Edgar. He changed my life. The LEC changed my life. And I worked as a deputy director. As many of you know, Edgar is our executive director. And I was really proud of the progression of my career because I set out to be a teacher and an educator. When I decided to leave the classroom, it felt like a huge failure. As a first generation person, you're not supposed to rock the boat. You're not supposed to ask questions. You're not supposed to be too loud. And that's what I felt like I was constantly doing, to the point where I felt like I needed to go work in advocacy. And again, coming from a family of fear and having to like really hide yourself, um, it was a stretch for me. And I felt like a failure leaving the classroom. So the LEC, though, I mean, hopefully all of you know, people who are watching and people who've interacted, the original purpose when Edgar and I started working together was to increase Latino representation in K through 12 classrooms. And that was so profound to me, because being the only Latina teacher in my school, being one of the only Spanish speaker teachers in my school, the weight of that responsibility was so heavy that it pushed me out. You have parents and families and kiddos who will come to you as a resource, being the only Latina, being the only Spanish speaking, and you do it willingly. You continue to do it willingly as being a support system for that community. But it burned me out. It burned me out. And so seeing that mission that Edgar had established with the LEC, I was like, yes, if there was more Susanas, more Spanish speakers, more Latinos, more Asian teachers, more Black teachers, more teachers that could relate to our community of kids, so that the weight and the responsibility isn't on just one person. It's almost like the LEC was like, yes, Margarita.
Can I?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, our beginners are completely the opposite.
Yeah.
Sometimes were completely different situations.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that happened, I went to the best schools, private schools, and everything. I was not daring like you.
Mm-hmm.
I never did anything. I was the goody two shoes,
Mm-hmm.
horrendously goody two shoes, no friends. And my parents only were very strict. They were not that loving, the caring, hugging. They worked the hell a lot of time. So for every 100, yes, the calificación, we would get a kiss. That were the only kisses I got from my mom. She would never kiss us. It was my grace. Oh, one kiss. Oh, grammar. Oh, one more. Okay. And we go, oh, my mom kisses. So it was our grades were fighting for her love. I remember one time reading to me, and she said, I can't wait until you grow older so I can stop reading to you the comic books. So I learned to read like around 4 or 5. So it was very shy person, not very daring. One thing that I really in my school, one of the schools that really marked me a lot, and it is they let me go to teach in the mountains where there were no roads. The houses were sticks, really sticks, some really bad houses. There was no school. They trained us to read and write and to teach how to read and write. So Saturdays I would go there, and that was amazing. Where do you teach to read and write when there is no school, there is nothing? So our classroom was a cemetery. Everybody would go early to wipe the stone tomb, clean it to see one that had no grave, and that was the desk. So, but that one was very interesting. I was like 15, 16 when I was doing that, 15 maybe. And okay, I'm glad the ad was written there to read and write, and it's finished, and now the class the year is over. And they come to give us thank you. So thank you, everybody, to their own teachers. And they call my students to just want to hug me. And I didn't want them to hug me because so bad for that. And I was like, I don't want you to hug me because you're dirty. There was such a divide, which I didn't know the divide. I think I was doing the right thing. But then comes one lady, very short lady, with a chicken in her hand. And she says, thank you, and gives me the chicken. The legs were tied. I was like, I cannot touch a chicken. I'm scared. Please take it. No, I can't. It's yours. Please take it. Please take the chicken. And I said, I can't, because at first I couldn't even touch the chicken because I was scared. And then I needed to process that one. And then it's another one with 3 bubble gums, the one that you put in the machine, you take it around, and brings me 3 bubble gums, all sweaty, and the hand painted with all the colors. And I thought, puke. No, I cannot take them. They are yours. But it was like, I cannot take them. That was it, I finished. And then there was another thing, I don't remember that one, but those 2 things bother me. I'm telling you this because we really don't know how much other people needs us, and there's always someone who really needs you, and how much you will learn by giving. You are going to get much more by giving than by getting. So as soon as you can, in the condition that you are, instead of being one of the getters, have, be the one that you give. Because what you have already, this education that you have, just is a treasure. There's other people who wish they could read and write. And don't feel that you don't have much more than what you can imagine. Just don't waste it. To me, just that memory, I cry because we become snobbish and we don't know. I'm so grateful for my parents, is education.
Mm-hmm.
It was education, education, education. I'll tell you another story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm divorced. Don't beat your wives. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
And don't scream to your wives. Ever. Because I'll be dead and I will chase you. and and there was a huge earthquake. I'm divorced. I'm raising my children alone. And my business is flattened. For the second time I lose my business, everything is flattened. Mexico City is flattened. And I remember I saw something in front of a pile of this pile of rock that was the office.
Mm-hmm.
I said, from here on, nor God, nor any human being, nor act of God, no human being will ever take what I have done or the wealth I have achieved. Whatever. Never. From here on, my business is going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Here. So wherever I go, the earthquake will not take it away. Not a bad husband will take it away. No fraud will take it away. My business is here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to study the master's.
You know what? Your stories, thank you for sharing. I want to summarize by actually what I'm going to talk about next, which is that you, I, I think, unfortunately, some of us, me included, standard, and you're like, okay, that's what I have to be. I have to be clean. I have to stand this way. I have to look this way. My hair has to be this way. My thank you. My jewelry has to be this way, et cetera, right? And anything that derives from that is bad. My brain, and actually I do think that my life and my upbringing led me to this diagnosis. I have OCD. And my brain works very black or white. It's either good or it's bad. And I think the way that I was raised impacted that. There's no fault to my parents. It was because we had to make it. It was literally life or death. You have to make it in this country. And so going to college, becoming a teacher was like, uh, you have to be perfect. You have to have A's only. When you talk about, my mom would only kiss me with if I had an A, or if I got an A, then that would be my kiss. It's like, then you don't have, as a child, your highest value is that affection from your parents. And so I'm not going to do absolutely anything that's going to keep me from getting this A, right? As you get older, your values change. And my value became being this career person, being this perfect teacher, being a pillar for my community, etc. And I think this next part of my story, again, thinking about the title Beyond the 9 to 5, was the universe and was God being like, you are only showing kids and children in your community how to conform. And when you're showing people how to conform, those people who don't want to conform for good reasons are going to seem like a failure. And you're doing people of an injustice by doing that. So the title of my next part is that the system doesn't work for us. I worked so hard, y'all, to like wedge into that system. I'm a perfect student. I won't say a perfect student. I'm a straight A student. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get those scholarships. I'm going to be whatever the classes in college tell me to do, I'm going to do that. If you tell me it's not good to wear hoop earrings, I'm going to stop wearing hoop earrings, because I was told that it was unprofessional to wear earrings larger than a quarter. And so I stopped wearing earrings larger than, even though that is my style. It is actually, I was told, do not ever have hair that is not natural born hair color. I've always wanted to have pink hair. Finally, I eventually did. And actually, this was only a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. Now my hair is very obviously blue. But you're given all this advice from people who are successful in this system. They're like, oh, you want to make it to the top? I'll show you how. That accent you have, out the door. The way you talk, out the door. The way you walk, the music you listen to, the people you hang out with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You got to leave that behind. I did that. And I'm very proud of where it got me, very proud of my teaching career, all of that. But my son was born to interrupt all of that, at least my perception. So I told you my Carlos Amado, he was born in October 2020. And this was after my husband and I struggled to conceive for a little while. Again, that was my first inkling of like, what the hell? I did everything right. I went to college. I bought a house. I have a husband. He's a nice husband. He works hard. He went to school. He has a career now. And then we do this thing that was forbidden for so long, have children. And I couldn't for longer than a year. That was the first time that it was like, why is the world punishing me? Why is God in the universe punishing me when I did everything right? I got pregnant, which was fun. And I found out I was pregnant March 17th or something, and the city was going to shut down the next day. Remember, it was like that 2 weeks where like we weren't doing absolutely anything until we figured out what was going on. We were excited. We actually went, we went to, I know this is like making light of it, but it's the truth. We went to Sam's Club, got a bunch of beer, got takeout, got Chinese. We really stocked up on like, I guess we're going to be home for a few days, right? And then I take my pregnancy test and it was positive, and I was like, I guess I'm not drinking all that beer. It was a blessing, a huge blessing. But then that meant that we were going to have a baby in the middle of COVID. And as you see, we spent some time in the NICU. It was the hardest time of my life. I got PTSD from that time that I had to work through with a therapist. It was the most eye-opening experience of my life. My pregnancy was completely normal. And as I'm telling this story, I want you to consider my title, right? Beyond the 9 to 5, going beyond that standard. Completely typical pregnancy. And when I give birth, the doctors say we can't get his oxygen levels to do what they need to do. It's very common when babies are born, you know, they have fluid in their lungs, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I thought that was. And they said, we're going to keep him in the NICU for a little bit. Well, he needed an ambulance to Children's Mercy. He was born at KU. I left the hospital against medical advice. You can sign a paper that says, if you die when you leave here, don't sue us. I signed that paper. And I went to be with my son at Children's Mercy. We were there for 3.5 months. He, long story short, was born with genetic differences. That basically means his lower jaw is too small for his head. His tongue is mostly in his throat. He has a small throat, and he has some more deformities in his head. I didn't even know, I don't know if you know this, but genetics is crazy. I didn't know that you can have a genetic difference that is not passed down from your parents. So it's like 0.00002% chance that you get something in your genes that's different than your mom or dad. That's what Carlos Amado got. Edgar calls him an X-Man because he is very unique. He's so unique that less than 20 people ever in humankind have had his genetic difference. There's no name for it. This is how it showed up in him. And the reason I say he was my like push away from that conformity and that standard was because the world doesn't work for Amado. He can't breathe the way that you and I breathe. He was one of the youngest tracheostomies at Children's Mercy. He got a tracheostomy at 2 weeks old. After, this is going to be difficult to hear, but after he died 3 times, they finally said he needed a tracheostomy. And so everything I had thought about the world, everything I thought about this country, everything I thought about existing came crashing down, because this is what I envisioned. You know, I was going to become a mom, 2 or 3 days in the hospital, whatever. You go home, you're like your snuggle little bed, and you like learn how to nurse, and and everyone's coming to your aid and bringing you tea and massaging your feet and like all the things, right? And then, you know, I was going to be on maternity leave for 6 weeks, and then I was going to come back, and he was going to go to a babysitter or to a daycare, right? And that was like the complete opposite of what happened. We spent, like I said, 3.5 months in the NICU, and he got a tracheostomy, he got a G tube, and everything about my life had to change. I called Edgar when I was in the NICU, and I said, I was deputy director of the LEC, or I was working for the LEC at the time, and I said, hey, I don't care about education anymore. I said, I don't care about our mission. I don't care about schools. I don't care about my degrees. I quit. And he said, Sana, take a breath, go do what you got to do. We'll talk about this later. You know, that's how I felt. And I do think that it was the universe's way of saying, you are being harmful in perpetuating that you have to be perfect. You have to talk this way. You have to walk this way. You have to, in order to do what you need to do in this life, to be successful. Amado was a way of saying, oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to breathe. And I'm going to need this very scary thing. I don't know if, here he is now, but I'll show you that in a second. Actually, I did say I was going to go back and forth. I'm going to need this device. My family is from a very small village in Durango, in Mexico, Santa Maria del Oro. My grandma couldn't get a cast on her arm when she broke her wrist at the hospital. They put a wooden plank and tape around her arm when she broke her wrist. That's how small of a town I'm from. So my concept of the medical, to get you're gonna do what to my kid's throat? And my mom is like, what? Is it gonna come out? Does it fall out? Will he pull it out? Right? A G tube, what do you mean doesn't eat with his mouth? And like, how? All the advice my mom had given me about being a mother, everything I'd seen with every child that I'd raised people in schools and my nieces and nephews, all of that went out the window. So again, that like conformity, that standard of what literal life is, had to go out the window. So here, I have these gifts right here because as I'm going through my pictures, I'm like, my kids are never wearing clothes. Like, what is happening? But I wanted to now to talk about starting a business. February of this year, I was forced to quit my job. Medicaid came knocking at the door. My son has special needs. We don't qualify for Medicaid based on income. He qualifies only because he's disabled. He has a disability. They came knocking on the door in February and they said, you will now have a premium of $2,200 a month. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm like, this got to be wrong. I don't understand. I'm working full time at the LEC. I'm very successful in my work. My husband obviously works full time. And so I call. A new legislation passed in Missouri. Some of the stuff from COVID had now expired. And they re-looked at our income, and you make too much money. $2,200 was going to end up being like 50% of my income a month was going to go to the state of Missouri. So Edgar and I talked, and it was like, go to part-time. Let's see what happens. Okay, great. Your circumstances changed. You now owe us $1,300 a month, which again was going to be about half of my income. Had to quit my job. All of this conformity of like, you better go to school, you better go to college, you better, it was like, became such BS. The level of frustration that I have, I'm going to get a little emotional, but this is so real. The level of frustration I have for this system, that it tells people like me and undocumented people and immigrants, it tells you you're supposed to do it the right way. Why don't you just come the legal way? And why don't you just do this? Or why don't you just do that? And then you do that. And don't dare have a kiddo with special needs. Or don't dare yourself have a disability. Don't dare need from the system in this way, because actually everything that you did, all of these degrees and all of these, blah, 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 is going to matter nothing. So if people are watching, and you're being told like you have to conform, you have to follow the standard in this way, a fair warning that, like this title says, this system doesn't work for us. And so even though really difficult things, this year has been the hardest year of my life. After I've worked so hard, getting a master's degree while teaching, you guys know, being in college, studying late at night, the teacher exams, working really hard for my career. The rug got pulled out from under me. It was the universe's biggest way of saying, you are doing an injustice to yourself and to your children by shutting into this box. You have to talk this way, you have to be this way, you have to go to college, you have to, right? So I've started a business. And actually the way that I started a business, because this is so random, like every time I see, this is my shop setup. And every time I see my shop setup, I'm like, Sana, you're the most random person ever in life. Like, this is so random. But the way that it started, and this is so real, I learned how to coupon, because after I lost my job, our quality of life changed. Like, I had to learn how to afford things that I really didn't have to worry about before. And this was that kind of stuff, right? So like shampoo. And I learned how to coupon. And I got so good at it because, one, I have OCD, like I said. And then two, I have a lot of knowledge and like research and all of that I was like, so I could also still be serving community in this way. Because if I'm getting toothpaste for $1, but toothpaste costs $4, I could sell it for $2 or $3. People are still saving money and I'm building a business. So I'm making $1 from the toothpaste. People are still not having to pay $4, right? And I'm like, this is what I'm doing now. It was such a like authentic way that this came to life. I don't see myself like selling things like this forever. It was honestly the way, like in search of liberation, the way that I could be home with my kids, the way that I could be on the phone with Medicaid and cuss people out as long as I needed to for as many days as I need to, and not just Medicaid, but like other systems. If you know anything about the way that it is to work within a system like that, you know how difficult and debilitating it is. I have screenshots of being on wait times for 8 hours. I have screenshots of being on hold for 6 hours and then being hung up on as soon as you get on the phone. Working with that system is impossible. And so that's what this made possible. I included these screenshots in particular because this is Amado in the second picture. He helps me with laundry. And did I ever think I would be the kind of mom that could be at home at 1 o'clock and be like, hey guys, we got to do laundry. And then like watch them, like painfully watch them do laundry, right? Because they're like going so slow and they're like, but that's my OCD, right? Like that conformity of like, come on, we got to hurry up. Come on, we got to hurry up. But like stepping back and being like, you know what? It's okay that he's dropped it on the floor and like he's like making a mess. Actually, in the video I'll show you next, like this last picture hurts my whole body. It hurts because as someone with OCD and my mom growing up, it's like, don't step on the floor without socks and without shoes. Stop letting her crawl. She's getting her pants all dirty, right? Like that, just those very strict standards of what acceptable is. I had to be that way working that 9 to 5 because I was like, babe, I got to go to work. I got this, I got that, da, 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 da. But my business, the flexibility to like do laundry and wash your face after this, right? This is Amado in that FaceTime. I started a garden. I've always wanted a garden. And my 9-to-5 life just did not make that possible. You know what I did? I was at PH Coffee. They do great things for community. One day they had like seeds out there for free. And I was like, don't know how to do this. I didn't even read the instructions because I'm like, they talk about like the zone you're in and all of that. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to put holes in the floor and then see what happens. Well, like these squash came from it. And Amado helped me. He helped me dig the holes. He watered them every morning. And so he was super proud when they were finally grown. And we were FaceTiming my mom. And then let me show you these quick videos.
You got it. Córtale más, córtale más. Ajá.
Where like the knives aren't sharp, but they'll cut through like a fruit.
Push it down. Púshalo para abajo.
Yeah, and he loves that. He's such, if you've ever met Amado, he's such an intellectual. Like he really loves, and then we got chicken. Look, we found the first egg.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, it's very poopy in there at the moment, but.
Whoa.
See, like no shoes. Like my mom would kill me if she knew my kid was in the backyard with no shoes. He said he wants to open it. We know sign language as a family. Inside. So that was another thing. My son can't speak. So it was like, we could either accept that or you could be like, cool, well, what's the options here? So we learned sign language as a family. We're trilingual. We're a trilingual family. But again, just kind of like going beyond the norm. Not by choice in some ways, right? But I think that the universe and God knew that I was destined to be doing something beyond that like box that the 9-to-5 puts you in. That it's like, you have to do this way and you have to talk this way and you have to be this way. And then building my business, it has been my opportunity to live outside that box. And then for my kids to explore their lives in a way that is outside that box. Because perhaps whatever they want to do isn't the norm. I tell my little brother, I helped raise my little brother at one point, and I tell him, like, if you want to be a bum on a beach in LA, because he like doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life, I'm like, let's be the best bum on the beach in LA. Like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But let's make it to where you have a bank account with a little bit of money in it so that, you know, and like, let's get a tent that actually does cover you from the elements. Like, but instead of being a bum in LA, that's a failure. That's bad. Instead, like, if that's really where your spirit and where your soul takes you, like, go do that. Because you could do what I did and conform, and the rug be pulled up under you anyway. You know? So anyway, that's my story about living beyond the 9-to-5 and building a business in search of liberation. You'll see my products here, like I said, and actually we're expanding very soon. I made my niece's invitations for her quinceañera. It was my first attempt at like diving into the crafts of my business. And so you'll see a little bit of that. And like I said, that gives me the opportunity to still do this stuff while still like making a little bit of money. So that's me. That's my story. Thank you so much for being here in person and for everyone online. My business mostly works off of social media, so please follow us. Don't overspend on your products. I learned how to coupon for you, like toothpaste, anything. There was actually like, I'm on these couponing groups, right? And there was like a whole like tool set that's usually $700 at Home Depot was on sale for $14 today. Like, people found a glitch. Like, you can find glitches sometimes. They were sold out by the time I got to it. But if there's ever things you need, if you're struggling or really you just want to save money, like, my business is the place to go. So it is. El Oro's Tesoro is the name.
I have one question.
Yes.
If this children,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, this young person,
People.
this young person, they said, okay, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start.
You're like two thoughts at once. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
At this age and with the resources they have.
Mm-hmm.
What they do, ideas of things they could be using to start selling,
Mm-hmm.
or what kind of business like them
Mm-hmm.
could do.
Mm-hmm.
And we as community,
Mm-hmm.
how can we support? Let's say they are the pilot.
Yeah.
How could we help them start a business?
Here's what I'll say to that. My passion, you got to find your passion. And I don't mean your passion like I love art, right? I'll go with that example because a lot of people in this community are artists. I mean your passion for like when it comes time to sell that art, what is your purpose for selling the art? Like if you're wanting to get rich, then you're going to have a different mindset for how you do that art versus if you want to help community.
Or you usually want to feed your children.
Or you want to feed your children.
Tonight.
Yes, I want to eat dinner tonight. Yes. So that's what I mean by passion and purpose is like if you're wanting to help community, for example, my products, I'm not passionate about Tide and Gain or Colgate, right? Like I'm not passionate about the products. My passion came from I know how to save money, so I'm about to save you money because my passion is community and my purpose is community, right? I never thought I'm not a salesperson. I am an educator. I'm not going to upsell you. I'm not doing this to make money. If you were like, I really need toothpaste, can I take this and I'll pay you in 5 weeks? I'd say yes, right? You have to find your purpose for why you want to do what you want to do and do it for that reason. So regardless of what you're selling or regardless of what your business is, you need to decide what's your purpose behind going into it. Yeah.
I remember one your experience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There was this high school and public school in which there was a class. I don't know how it started,
Mm-hmm.
but the children had to start a little business of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that factories
Mm-hmm.
have products that are with defects, socks, stockings, like socks someone makes factories.
Mm-hmm.
There was another that sell Levi's. I don't remember the brand.
Yeah.
Clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got those defective products for some reason, and the factories had the socks, and the kids got them.
Mm-hmm.
They got them free, the first batch, so they could start.
Mm.
And then they had their stand selling socks.
That's
From
cool.
then on, they could buy the stuff. I give me back. The factory was very supportive because they were helping the kids.
Mm.
So
they have some kind of purpose that they're fulfilling, whether it's like a tax write-off or like whatever, right? Like, yeah.
Not losing any money,
right.
Giving them.
Right.
The kids had a start.
Mm-hmm.
We did it.
Yeah.
And then they started from then on. They had to learn how to do the taxes and how to do this and a little bit of marketing and a little bit of something.
Here's another great example of that. Have you all seen like now they do ugly fruits and vegetables? I don't know what they call it, right? But the ones that aren't perfect and pretty and that aren't going to go to like Dole, they were just throwing them away before. But now people have started companies to say, well, instead of throwing them away, give them to us, because there are people like me who don't care what the apple looks like. I just want the apple, right? So if I were you, I think in this generation, climate change is a big issue. Housing is a big issue in Kansas City. Building in a way that's going to be helpful, like going to help you bring dinner to the table, but also actually housing we don't have enough of, right? So like, how do you do that and help people while also making a little bit of money? Of course.
You're saying about how you can help the community, like young people helping with their businesses, is consuming their product as well. Meaning instead of not go into a nothing, not go to Aldi, right? You can go to Aldi, but instead of going there, go to, this store and buy the products from here.
Yes.
Because you are helping the community like that, like making them know. Like that.
Mm-hmm. It has a very real little impact. Whereas all these, I mean, any big business's CEO, he sleeps well, he or they
You know
sleep
about the
well at
systems,
night.
right? The systems and
Yeah.
the systems are included, like all these stores and Walmarts and all that. So instead of helping the big system, the huge
Yeah,
system that is
they-
moving the other systems, help
prefer-
it the community.
Exactly.
Also, I have suggestions because you don't know how, but there's many grown-ups, people who are already doing that could bail you and say on behalf, can you help me write a letter so we can do this, so I can approach the company, and then they know you are a professional, that you have the back behind you, you have salary action, or you
Yeah, there's people
something. There's people
willing to back you like that. Yeah.
willing to back you and say, okay, you're going to do this. Perfect. I write a letter. I support that you want to start your business. You want to set frames. Okay, Northeast Arts KC. Okay, you want to do that? All right, get up frames and then go and sell your frames. We need frames.
Yeah.
Things of the sort.
I know frames are too expensive at Walmart, for example, right? But if you sold them for cheaper and it's also helping you make a living, like that's even better, So
Canvases to artists.
yes.
You buy them for $125 and then you sell them for $250.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everyone. I know that we have other presenters here today. Deanna, we're good? Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.